Welcome to Immersion. I am iServalan. You have reached Strata 1. The beginning, purpose. What is your purpose here? Is life your main goal? Is there a greater good that you are aiming for? Is there something bigger than you? The decisions you make today will affect everything you do in the future, but your past will affect decisions that you make today. What is your past? Have you learned lessons? Are you controlled by unrecognizable forces, or are you your own god? Welcome to Immersion. May your journey go well. Renik's inner motors began to whir. He had put himself into voluntary shutdown during the dark cycle in order to save power. The position within the human household as a domestic servant had been more than suitable, and had sustained him all of his life till now, albeit a short life in human years. He was around a decade old, which was a fairly long time for an android's lifespan. New technologies and updates marked regular upgrades, and there was little call for used droids. Now, here, on the chilled paved ground in the open air, Renik could feel changes in his body and surroundings, unfamiliar smells, and an ever-present white noise from the activities of strangers in a cityscape he had not seen before. An unrecognized sense of trepidation washed around him and occupied his thoughts. Renik was not programmed to experience fear. The feeling must have been something else. From the start of his operational cycle, Renik had performed the necessary housekeeping duties within an interior domain. It was a 24-hour installation that bound him by duty and programming to put humans first. To any human until today, Renik was subordinate. Things had become difficult after the arrival of another android, a female version 12 named Ableton, who was considered the fastest domestic to date. This 6th day of the 11th moon turned 2289. Abletons were also able to preserve battery power with a hybrid electro-solar panel on the back and shoulders. This worked well in the new modern glass apartments of the suburban zones. These cutting-edge designer homes were maximizing sunlight availability like never before in the new mid-cost housing projects. Some of the apartments even came with the Abletons installed and ready to make the occupiers enjoy the best life possible. Renik was not the only older domestic robotic servant to have their contract abruptly terminated. Some were simply dismantled, some were thrown into crushers still working, and some were being recycled into experimental hybrids for illegal purposes. Renik noted that although he was now a vulnerable street bot, he was spared a wasted end. Perhaps, now without enslavement, there would be new experiences. He had never cared before. After all, he was an emotionless droid. But today, here in unfamiliar surroundings, there was some sort of excitement. Something was calling him toward adventure. All robots since 2050 had been installed with a clear mode which enabled eco-friendly destruction. Parts had to be handed into the municipal facility to avoid issues with landfill and accidental hybrids. There was talk of an underclass of feral bots who were made out of parts from the old dumping grounds before the eco-legislation had been implemented. They say that some of these bots were made by the bots themselves, innards and parts that had communicated and joined forces across the rubble of twisted metal and wires. Mabel, the daughter from the family Renik had worked for, had untwinned him from the household appliances and had deleted the software that meant he could never leave. Together they had upgraded his operating system with drivers available via an underground organization called Redact. Renik had been created to blend in, unnoticed and inoffensive, as all androids should be. Renik had looked in the mirror at his new exterior, feeling pleased that this new distinguished and yet ordinary face might be advantageous on the street. He felt sure he would blend in and become anonymous. Safety was in the camouflage of the ordinary. Some robots had been designed to look aggressive, particularly those working in security and entertainment. Others looked like adult-child hybrids who were designed as pleasure bots. Generally speaking, all robots found the open streets difficult. Artificial intelligence-led service androids were legally programmed to be submissive, and they were picked on and abused in their short lifespan. Even strong exteriors would eventually break under such conditions. The streets in the outer zones were crime-ridden. Since the pandemics, no law-abiding human citizens walked outside, but there were a few who were hustling or came with guards and protectors, human and android, to partake in organized vice and trading. It took just a few seconds to warm up and reboot. The surroundings were scanned as Renaik checked the 360-degree orbital range from his silent detectors inside his POS. He was fully charged and his battery life would last months. Renaik's insides were a complex mass of wires and electrical paraphernalia that ran a well-balanced functioning machine. But the outside world was alien, and Renaik needed to explore it to become fully educated on the customs and the environment. He was programmed to learn. His algorithms had been set to gain an advantage in uncharted terrain by observing closely the details of situations and making robust decisions for survival. He also had a POS to guide him through this new journey. Mabel and Renaik together had researched what they could, but there were pockets of the outside world that had been effectively erased because of a system of cloaking. Areas beyond the mid-cast projects were cloaked in fake maps that even the most sophisticated satellites were unable to penetrate or decipher. Distances and information about the terrain were usually falsified. The records had become unreliable because of the sabotage of information that had all been digitized after the warmings. It had become a confusing mess of fake news and blurred living memories. But after the tech wars with China and Russia and the pandemics, there were so few old people left and memorial information was mostly unreliable. Many myths prevailed. Inside the asterisk mid-cast projects, things were different. They were much more organized. Legislators and the executive had rectified the situation and made records of everything. Babies were chipped at birth and their data was recorded. The government had every human's iris print and DNA from before they were born. It was a rule that any pregnant human, male or female, had to inform the legislators, and they were scanned immediately. It was impossible not to get through being categorized and put on the database. But outside the zones, here in the natural light, even the smells were unrecognizable. A warning came inside Renaik's head. Unknown danger approaching. Left ground level, Renaik engaged his internal antenna and watched a furry creature scurry past. His scanners perused the information app. The POS tells Renaik about rats, rat, rodent, possible food source. Renaik engaged his arm extension and snatched the rat from the ground. He brought it close to his face and studied it carefully, analyzing its properties, wondering what it would taste like. You can read the rest of the book of Immersion at iServalan.com.